Early morning, flying in shorts.
So after some of the hottest weather in UK history, with temperatures getting so high that it would not only melt runways and buckle railway tracks, but it would see gingers everywhere running for their lives. However, the clouds would form and the rain would start to fall, and which was once great flying weather, it would turn to weather where you could only talk about flying.
Which brings us on to today's subject, propellers, and more specifically, two-bladed propellers. Why are you talking about two-bladed propellers and no three-bladed propellers? Well, my good buddy Giles Fowler over on Golf Foxtrot 22 done a really good video some time ago about why two-bladed propellers are far better for us than three-bladed propellers. So I'm not going to get too bogged down in the science of that. If you want to find out more on that, bounce over to Golf Foxtrot 22 and check that video out. It's really good. It's very detailed and very, very analytical. It's quite a nice lengthy one. Check it out. However, why am I talking bladed props today? Well, quite frankly, because there's so many out there. Since I started flying, it was always explained to me, kid, buy a Helix. You want to buy a Helix, son? Get yourself a Helix, kid. They're the cream of the cream of the crop, the best of the best. And to be fair, they are a good propeller. They're a good solid propeller. They'll take the occasional dink, but they're not indestructible. And sure, you can get them repaired, but with repairs sometimes not living up to expectations and increasingly getting more expensive, are you better off buying a propeller that's maybe just a little bit more than the cost of a repair? Are you in fact better off buying that said propeller to begin with? Let's find out. I reached out to a couple of companies and some of them got back to me. Some of them were really good with me and others not so good. One of the companies that I was quite surprised with was Helix, who when I reached out to them just responded with 2 blue ticks. Yes, they'd seen the message but never got back to me, and there was quite a couple of messages went out to them that were all responded to with 2 blue ticks. Now, if that says anything about customer relations or customer interactions and service, then take what you like from that, but that is what happened. In fact, to this day, I've still not received any written response back from them. So we already had a Helix prop, albeit repaired, but we reached out to 2 other companies, and that was KD Propellers and DT Propellers, both of which I believe are based in the middle of the Ukraine, which at this time may result in some postage problems. But I do know of one person who recently ordered a propeller from KD, and although there was a bit of a wait, it still came to him from a war zone. Please understand if there's a delay. Now, I'm a little bit biased with KD Propellers because they were right out the bat, really helpful, offered me all sorts to help out as best they could. So what they done was they sent me a 3-bladed propeller, and I was like, wow, this is cool, but I want to stick to 2-bladed propellers. Yeah, not a problem, send it back, sent it back. They sent me out a 2-bladed propeller. They were really helpful, they were really good, and they done this all free of charge. I did have to cover the return postage, but they done everything else. So a little disclaimer there. They have been really helpful for this video. The other company was DT Propellers. Now, they did help a little by offering me a discounted price. Now, understand when I'd done all this was before all the troubles in the Ukraine, but it has taken some time to eventually make the video. I already had a Helix, which meant KD versus Helix versus DT. How did we get on? go. Clear prop. Okay, so that's quite interesting. Already off the bat, I notice a slight difference. One of the things I notice is it revs a lot higher. So with my Helix, I believe it revs up to just under 7,500 revs. This, on the other hand, was going up to almost 8 quite quickly. So it does spool up quite quick in comparison. It is a little lighter. In all honesty, it doesn't feel like it's producing the same thrust. Saddens me a wee bit. I still feel like I'm getting good thrust, don't get me wrong, and the difference is very minuscule, but it is there, I do notice it. So, with that being said, let's stick the DT on and see how that goes. That's the DT on. No problem. Predictions for this are not promising, as it does feel very light and very small, but you know. Now that's quite interesting too. I must say, it's really difficult to say between the KD and the DT, sorry, the KD and the DT. The difference again is negligible, I can't really tell, but one thing I did notice is that the DT doesn't rev as high as the KD, which surprises me because the DT seems so much smaller, lighter, smaller cord, and I thought that it would have just basically fired off to the moon, so that's quite surprising. But just to clarify things, I'm going to do every single prop again. I'm going to do the DT one more time, take a note of the numbers. I'm going to do the KD one more time, take a note of the numbers and the way it feels, and I'll stick the Helix back on and I'll report back to you in a wee minute. Okay, so that was the DT and it went to 7,660 RPMs. Back to the KD again. Clear prop. Opinions are changing all the time here, so it did finally hit 8,000 RPMs. I did notice that when I started it up though, the RPM gauge is bouncing, but on a steady hold I did manage to get it to just hit 8,000 RPMs. It was sitting about 980 for the majority of it, but it did get up to 8,000. So that was the KD propeller, 8,000 RPMs flat out. This time though, going from the DT back the way, it actually felt like it was giving me a bit more of a push. Back to the Helix. The mighty Helix. Please note that although it says Parajet on the prop, it is a Helix. It's an HF30, 130 by bloody blah blah blah. I can't remember, but I'm sure you do. Beware the power! Or not. Well, that is interesting again, because I was obviously off a little bit before with my figures, because actually the Helix spins at 7,600 and a little bit, 6,620 RPMs. So the closest in terms of RPMs at full revs was actually the DT. But I don't know if you noticed there, I was taken a bit by surprise because it appears that the Helix spins up a fraction slower than both the KD and the DT. So what do we learn from that? Absolutely nothing. I think what we're going to need to do on this one is we're going to have to come up with some way, some method, producing some figures for the all-out thrust. Okay guys, so I've had a quick look around about the workshop, and unfortunately there isn't really anything that I can make a jig with to measure the thrust of each propeller in such a short period of time. But what we can do is we can go old school. So, first up is the Helix.
Now, as I set up to inadvertently blow the stench of some several hundred tons of freshly baked manure down the valley to the neighbouring holiday homes, I would ask that if you're in health and safety, then you please change the channel now. Also, if you're a budding pilot or considering getting into the sport, or just have common sense, then please do not try this at home.
Here we go. Oh, okay, so that was about 65 kilos of thrust there. Whew, it flat out. Okay, so that was the Helix. Now, on to the DT. Okay, just a little bit less in the Helix. Okay, so that was saying and reading about 55 kilograms of thrust, whereas the Helix, it was reading out that it had done 65 kilos of thrust under the same scenario. Might not be exact, but just under the scenario. So there's a 10 kilogram of difference here. Let's check out the KD. One last time, clear prop. Okay, so let's see how the mighty KD performs. Again, these are probably not the most accurate of figures, but it should give us an example or an idea of how they perform against one another in similar situations. Set my marks. Whoa! Well, that was interesting. Let's take a look at the figures. Okay, so I've checked the figures back and the Helix was a clear winner. Now, I would say it was probably a difference in the region of around about 10 kilograms. However, it's not an accurate setup, and the truth of the matter is the best way to do that is going to be to get a thrust tester and put each prop on a jig. But for the meantime, I think the only real true way to test these props is to fly them. So first up is the KD. Okay, so the aim of the game here is I've set my trims out to position 9 on my Dudek Universal Classic, and what we'll do is we'll take measurements of level flight and then we'll do a maximum climb rate. So somewhere in the region of about 5,900 to 6,000
Level flight now. Trim position now. Maximum climb rate. Okay, punch it. Okay, so that wasn't even maximum RPM there, and we were getting over 400 feet a minute. Let's try again, hang on. Okay, so that was nearly 500 feet a minute there at maximum RPMs. I'll jump down on the ground, we'll get the propellers changed, and I'll see you back up in the sky. Okay, so next up is the DT. We'll knock those trims out to position 9 and take it from there. So level flight is definitely under 5,500, which appears lower than the KD. Okay, power climb, 7,500 RPMs. Whoa, 600 feet a minute. Again, this is using PPGS, so I'm not entirely sure how accurate that is. But for level flight, it's definitely sitting around the 5,000 RPM range, 5 to 5.3. It's definitely less than what the KD was. I'll just try another power climb. Seven and a half thousand RPMs, and yep, we just over 600 feet a minute there. Again, it's hard to say how accurate they are. It sometimes says 4 to 6, but it definitely appears to be giving me a higher climb rate than the KD did. We'll jump down and we'll switch to the Helix. Woo, what a night, I must say. It is like an absolute vacuum on the ground. But I do think that last takeoff was actually a downwind takeoff. I had to take a minute to catch my breath after that one, let me tell you. Right. So, we'll get some altitude, get the trims back out, do the figures again. I would say for level flight, you're just a little over 5,000. Now let's do a power climb. Full climb, here we go. What the hell? Okay. So that was over 600 feet per minute there. So it went to over 600 feet a minute. I did, however, sustain the RPMs a lot longer in this power climb than I did in the other two, purely because I feel a bit more comfortable with the Helix, because it's what I'm used to. But we'll talk about that a bit more later. It did go to 650, and then it was sustained. It was definitely sticking around the 550 to 600 mark. So what we'll do is, we'll get down on the ground and we'll sum up. In fact, you know what? It's too nice a night. I'm going to go for a quick spin first, and then I'll catch you on the ground. See you in a bit. There's some campers down there. Let's go have a look. What a lovely bunch of people.
Okay guys, so there you have it. 3 perfectly good propellers, all capable of doing the same thing. But which one was best? Well, that may in fact come down to some personal preferences. All 3 propellers have varying characteristics. They all, right out the bag, have one noticeable difference, and that is that the Helix weighs considerably more than both the DT and the KD. All 3 props have an amazing finish. There is no blemishes there, there's no lacquer falling off them, there's nothing to say that there's anything separating these propellers. The one thing that is noticeable is that the hubs on both the KD and the DT are approximately 10mm thicker than on the Helix. So if you do already fly Helix and you're considering either the DT or the KD, then you may wish to think about some longer bolts by approximately 10mm. In terms of their flying characteristics, they vary quite dramatically to one another, and what I'm hoping to do over the next few months is fly both the DT and the KD some more, because the Helix is the propeller that I fly the most. I'm so used to it that I'm quite comfortable with it. I know how it behaves as I hit the throttle and as I'm in mid-flight. I would like to familiarise myself both more with the DT and the KD moving forward to see how they perform. That being said, in relation to today's test and over the last few days, the propeller that was best for me is always going to be the propeller that produces the most thrust at the lowest RPMs. And that title today goes to the Helix. So if you did like today's video, guys, please hit the like button, smash the subscribe, and whack on that bell icon so any future videos that come off, you'll know about it straight away. Until that day, guys, please stay safe and enjoy your flights.